The first time I saw Julian Kane, he was strangling a man in an alley behind the rusty Anchor bar, his knuckles white with rage and his eyes burning like twin infernos. I should have run. Any sane person would view. My feet stayed glued to the cracked pavement, heart pounding like it wanted to claw its way out of my chest. I was just a nobody, a side character in this gritty coastal town of Port Marrow, doomed to fade into the background of someone else's story until I decided to rewrite my fate with the most dangerous man I'd ever met. My name's Eli Carter, a 24-year-old barista with no prospects, no family, and a knack for stumbling into trouble. Port Marrow, Oregon, was the kind of place where dreams came to drown gray skies, endless rain, and a fishing industry that had long since given up the ghost. I worked at Brew and Tide, slinging overpriced lattes to tourists and locals who all seemed to know something I didn't. That night, I'd taken the shortcut through the alley to avoid the rain, only to find Julian, the town's infamous outcast, pinning a thug against the wall with a snarl that could have curdled blood. Julian Kane was a walking paradox, beautiful and terrifying, like a storm you couldn't look away from. At 27, he was Port Marrow's resident villain, whispered about in hushed tones, a loner with a rap sheet, a sharp jawline, and a reputation for breaking hearts and bones with equal ease. They said he'd burned down his foster home at 16, that he ran with gangs before cutting ties, that he was cursed to destroy anyone who got too close. But I saw something else in those green eyes, a flicker of pain, a crack in the armor he wore like a second skin. "Don't just stand there, kid," Julian growled, not even looking at me as he tightened his grip on the thug's throat. "Either help or get lost." The smart move was to bolt. Instead, I stepped forward, my voice shaking but steady. "Let him go, Julian. He's not worth it." His head snapped toward me, and for a moment, I thought he'd turn that fury on me. But something shifted. His grip loosened, and the thug crumpled to the ground, gasping. Julian stepped back, wiping blood from his knuckles, his gaze locking onto mine like a predator sizing up prey. "You know my name," he said, low and dangerous. "Who the hell are you?" "Eli," I said, heart racing. "Just Eli." He smirked, a crooked thing that made my stomach flip. "Well, just Eli. You've got balls. Or a death wish." That was the moment I should have walked away. But I was tired of being invisible, tired of a life that felt like a footnote. I'd read enough novels to know side characters like me never got the spotlight. We existed to prop up the heroes, to die for their cause, to fade into obscurity. But Julian, he was no hero. He was the villain, the one who burned bright and broke everything in his path. And I wanted to burn with him. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stay away. I started lingering at the bar where Julian hung out, catching his eye across smoky rooms. He'd buy me a drink, toss me a barbed quip, and I'd fire back, our banter sharp and electric. I learned he wasn't just a thug, was smart, wickedly so, with a mind that saw through people like glass. He'd grown up in foster homes, bounced around until he landed in Port Marrow, where the town branded him trouble and left him to rot. But there was more to him, the way he'd slip money to the homeless guy outside the bar, the way his laugh softened when he thought no one was watching. One night, after too many whiskeys, I found myself alone with him on the pier, the ocean roaring below us. The air was thick with salt and tension, and I was dizzy with the kind of courage only liquor and desperation can give. You're not as bad as they say, I blurted, my breath visible in the cold. Why do you let them think you are? Julian's eyes darkened, his voice low. Because it's easier. People don't ask questions when they're scared of you. And what about you? I pressed, stepping closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. What do you want? Julian. He looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I saw the weight he carried, the loneliness, the fear of being seen. I want to stop running, he said, so quiet I almost missed it. But guys like me don't get happy endings. Eli. That was when I made the stupidest, bravest decision of my life. I leaned in, my heart hammering, and whispered, what if I could change that? What if I could save you? He laughed, a bitter sound, but his eyes never left mine. Save me? Kid, you don't even know what you're signing up for. I know enough, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. But I want something in return. His brow arched, intrigued. Yeah? What's that? I swallowed hard, the words burning my throat. You. I want you. The silence that followed was deafening, the crash of waves filling the void. Julian's expression was unreadable, but his eyes got. His eyes held a hunger that matched my own. You're playing a dangerous game, Eli, he murmured, stepping so close I could feel his breath on my lips. You sure you want to make that deal? I nodded, my resolve steeling. I'll save you, Julian, if you let me in. That night, under the flickering stars, he kissed me hard, desperate, like he was drowning and I was air. It was a bargain sealed in salt and fire, a promise that would either save us or destroy us both. But Port Marrow had other plans. The town wasn't just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing beast. And it didn't take kindly to people like us defying its rules. The next morning, I woke to whispers in the coffee shop. Julian was wanted for questioning in a string of robberies, crimes he swore he didn't commit. The evidence was flimsy, but Port Marrow didn't need proof to condemn its favorite villain. They wanted him gone, and I was the idiot who'd tied my fate to his. I found him at the edge of town, hiding out in an abandoned warehouse, his face bruised from a run-in with the cops. You should go, he said, not meeting my eyes. This is my mess, not yours. No, I said, grabbing his arm. We made a deal. I'm not leaving you. He looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for me. Eli, you don't get it. They'll come for you too. You're not invisible anymore. Good, I said, my voice fierce. I'm done being a side character. We're in this together, Julian, whether you like it or not. The warehouse smelled of rust and regret, a fitting hideout for two fools who thought they could outrun fate. Julian and I spent days piecing together the truth, digging through whispers and half-truths about the robberies. The more we uncovered, the uglier it got. Port Marrow's elite, the mayor, the sheriff, the fishing magnates were tangled in a web of corruption, pinning their crimes on Julian to keep him quiet. He'd seen too much, knew too much, and they wanted him silenced. I was just collateral damage, a nobody who dared to love the wrong man. Every night, we'd collapse on a pile of old blankets, too exhausted to speak, but too wired to sleep. Julian would trace patterns on my palm, his touch gentle in a way that felt like a secret he didn't know how to share. "Why are you doing this?" he asked once, his voice raw. "You could walk away, Eli. Live a normal life." "Normal's overrated," I said, lacing my fingers through his. "Besides, I'm in too deep. You're stuck with me." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened, and that was enough. In those stolen moments, we weren't just a doomed side character and a villain who were something more. Something neither of us had words for. But the world outside didn't care about our fragile happiness. The noose was tightening, and we were running out of time. One night, we got a lead, a dock worker who claimed he'd seen the sheriff's men planting evidence at Julian's old apartment. We snuck down to the docks under cover of darkness, the air thick with fog and suspicion. The worker, a grizzled man named Hank, met us behind a stack of crates, his eyes darting nervously. "You didn't hear this from me," he whispered, handing us a grainy photo of a cop slipping a bag of stolen goods into Julian's place. "They're setting him up. Always have." Before we could thank him, a gunshot cracked through the fog. Hank dropped, blood pooling beneath him, and Julian yanked me behind a crate as more shots rang out. My heart pounded, fear clawing at my throat. But Julian's hand was steady on mine. "Stay low," he hissed, his voice calm despite the chaos. "We're getting out of this." We ran, dodging bullets and shadows, until we reached the cliffs overlooking the ocean. The town's lights glittered below, a cruel reminder of the life we'd never have. Julian's face was grim, his jaw tight. "They'll keep coming," he said. "This isn't just about me anymore. They know about you." "Then we fight," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "We expose them. Together." He looked at me, his expression torn between awe and anguish. "You're insane, Eli Carter." "Yeah," I said, managing a shaky grin. "But I'm your insane." That night, we made a plan. We'd gather evidence, find allies, and bring the truth to light. But plans are fragile things in a town like Port Marrow. The next day, I was jumped outside the coffee shop, two goons in ski masks who left me bruised and bleeding in the alley. They didn't say a word, but the message was clear: back off, or you're next. Julian found me, his face paling as he knelt beside me, his hands gentle as he checked my wounds. "This is my fault," he said, his voice breaking. "I never should have let you get close." "Shut up," I said, wincing as I sat up. "I chose this. I chose you." He kissed me then, soft and desperate, like he was trying to memorize me before the world tore us apart. "You're too good for this, Eli," he whispered. "Too good for me." "No one's too good for love," I said, my voice fierce despite the pain. "Not even us." We kept digging, but the town fought back. Allies turned up dead or disappeared. Evidence vanished. The sheriff's men were always one step ahead, and the weight of it all started to crush us. Julian grew quieter, his touches more fleeting, like he was trying to protect me by pulling away. But I wouldn't let him. I'd made a bargain, and I was keeping it, no matter the cost. One night, we found a USB drive hidden in Hank's old locker, filled with documents linking the mayor to the robberies. It was our ticket out, our chance to expose the truth. but getting it to the right people meant risking everything. We decided to hand it over to a journalist in Portland, someone outside Port Merrow's reach. The catch: we had to get out of town first, and the sheriff's men were watching every road. We planned our escape for the next night, under cover of a storm. But as we packed, Julian stopped, his eyes haunted. "If this goes wrong," he said, "promise me you'll run. Don't look back." "No," I said, grabbing his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. "We're not doing this alone. You hear me? We're not losing each other." He nodded, but the fear in his eyes didn't fade. And as the storm rolled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that our bargain was about to come due. The storm hit Port Merrow like a vengeance, rain lashing the cliffs and thunder shaking the earth. Julian and I slipped through the shadows, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. We'd chosen the old coastal road, a crumbling path the sheriff's men rarely patrolled. But as we reached the edge of town, headlights cut through the rain-free cars, blocking our way. The sheriff stepped out, his face twisted with smug triumph. "End of the line. Kane," he called. "And your little boyfriend, too." Julian tensed, his hand gripping mine. "Stay behind me," he whispered. But I stepped forward, defiance burning through my fear. "We have proof," I shouted, holding up the USB. "You're done, Sheriff. The truth's coming out." He laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Truth don't mean much in Port Merrow, kid. Hand it over, and maybe you walk away." Julian moved faster than I could blink, shoving me behind him as he lunged at the sheriff. Chaos erupted, fists flying, shouts swallowed by the storm. I scrambled to help, my hands shaking as I fought off a deputy. But there were too many. Julian was a force, all raw power and rage. But even he couldn't take them all. A blow to his head sent him to his knees, blood mixing with the rain. "No," I screamed, throwing myself between him and the sheriff's raised fist. "You want the drive. You'll have to kill me first." The sheriff hesitated, his eyes narrowing. That split second was all we needed. Julian surged to his feet, tackling him to the ground, and I bolted for the car, the USB clutched tight. We tore down the road, tires screeching, the sheriff's men in pursuit. My heart pounded, but Julian's hand found mine, steady and sure. "We're gonna make it," he said, his voice fierce. "You and me." We reached Portland just before dawn, exhausted and battered but alive. The journalist, a woman named Clara with a reputation for taking down corrupt officials, took the USB and promised to publish everything. As we left her office, the weight of Port Merrow lifted, but the scars remained. Julian's hand trembled in mine, his eyes searching my face. "You saved me," he said, his voice soft. "Just like you promised." "And you kept your end of the deal," I said, smiling through tears. "You let me in." We stood on a quiet street, the city waking around us. And for the first time, I felt like the hero of my own story. Julian wasn't a villain anymore, not to me, not to himself. He was just a man, flawed and beautiful, who'd fought for a chance at something real. And I was the side character who dared to love him, to rewrite our ending. Months later, the story broke. Port Merrow's corruption was exposed, the sheriff and mayor arrested, and the town forced to reckon with its sins. Julian and I didn't go back. We found a small apartment in Portland. A place to start over. It wasn't perfect. Julian still had nightmares. And I still jumped at shadows, but it was ours. Every night, we'd sit on the fire escape, his arm around me, watching the city lights. Worth it? He'd ask, his voice teasing but his eyes serious. Every second, I'd say, kissing him soft and slow. Our bargain had been reckless, dangerous, born of desperation and desire. But it gave us something neither of us had dared to hope for, a future. In a world that tried to break us, we'd carved out a space where love wasn't just a risk, it was a triumph. And for two doomed souls, that was more than enough.